What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Young Legends podcast, where we help you get the cheat codes to the game of life. I'm your host, Caption, aka Caption Red, and I wish you the happiest of New Year's. Welcome to 2020. I hope your year is off to a wonderful start. And the new year is a great time to just reset, to think about some of the new changes that you're going to make in your life. And today's interview is going to help us do just that. Our guest today is Mr. Matthew Bivens, who is a balanced lifestyle coach and podcaster, helping ambitious and hardworking young people avoid the IOU syndrome, which stands for imbalanced, overstressed, and uninspired, and break through to new levels of confidence, abundance, and joy. Matthew, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. How's your day going?
My day is awesome. It's been fantastic, and I'm just really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I'm really excited about all the great things that you're going to share. What I like to do at the beginning of my interview is I like to ask my guests for a funny story, a cool story, just a story that is just fun to hear. I love hearing stories, and I love hearing people's stories. So you got any stories to share with us?
Dude, I racked my brain on this question for so long. I'm like, what story should I share? But I did come up with one, and this is the story of the first and only time I went skydiving. So nice. I'll share that story. So this took place a little over 3 years ago, and very close friend of mine. By profession, he's a magician. He's just this amazing magician, but by hobby, he is a skydiving enthusiast. Like, he's got 1,000+ dives under his belt. So he and I, we see each other every week. And one week we were talking, and he kept saying, "I'm gonna get you skydiving one day." And I sort of said in passing, I was like, "Yeah, I'd be open to that. Cool." And that was it. And we never revisited it. So fast forward like 6 months, and it's springtime going on summertime of 2016. And my wife, Sarah, she says, "Hey, Matthew, we got nothing going on this weekend. Let's go for a hike." And I said, "Cool, let's go for a hike. I'd love to. The weather's beautiful." So I throw on hiking gear. And in my case, that's basketball shorts and my running shoes, because that's what I use to go hiking. And we jump in the car, and she tells me where to go. And she's taking me to a place I've never been before. And I'm excited. So I'm like, we're going to go to some new mountain. We're going to go to some new river, creek. And then we turn off the main road and we go down some of these side roads. And I'm really getting excited now, because I love exploring areas I've never been to. And then all of a sudden we pass this little sign. It's like a 2x2 sign. And it says skydiving. And I look at her, and she has this little sly smile on her face. And I said, "No way." And she just kind of nods. And we round the corner, and I see this big like aluminum hangar. And lo and behold, there's an airstrip next to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she totally pulled the wool over my eyes. And we're not going hiking. We're freaking going skydiving. So I had a few minutes as we were pulling up to this place to like check myself and see, like, am I really open to this? Because first of all, I said it to my buddy kind of in passing. And second, I was not prepared to go skydiving, man. Like, I'm wearing basketball shorts and sneakers. And that factors into the story in just a minute. So we get out of the car, we go into the hangar. I see my buddy, my skydiving enthusiast friend. And within like 15 minutes, I'm shaking hands with the dude that I'm going to be strapped with. He's fitting me with a harness, and we're walking out to the plane. Like, it happened so fast. I really didn't have much time to react. So we climb on the plane, and Sarah, she's pregnant, by the way. She's pregnant at this time. And we're walking to the plane. And the pilot says, "Hey, would you like to ride with me?" And he's talking to Sarah. And so Sarah says, "Yeah, sure." And she gets to ride in this cool little like prop plane. And so she goes and sits up front, and I file into the plane with the guy that I'm doing the tandem jump with and my skydiving friend. And we're sitting at the very back of the plane, and, it takes off, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm just, the whole time I'm like, okay, this will be cool. I'm not afraid of heights, but the thought of jumping out of a plane definitely scares me. So we get to the jumping altitude, and everyone starts filing out, and the door opens, and as soon as it opens, it's freaking noisy. Have you ever been skydiving?
I actually have. I'm right there with you on all of this.
Yeah, so It's like, the door opens, and it's like noisy as anything, and it's cold too. it was like a spring or summer day, but it was cold when you get up to that altitude. And everybody around me, by the way, is wearing jeans and long sleeve shirts, or they're wearing jumpsuits. And here, my goofy butt is sitting in a t-shirt and basketball shorts and sneakers. So everybody files out the plane. I'm the last person to get out. And the person in front of me, there's like this big dude. I mean, he's, 6'4", 200 plus pounds, big guy. And he's jumping for the first time. And when he's doing a tandem, so he has the instructor on his back. And when they get to the door, this big dude freaks out and he just screams, no, 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 no. And he like runs to the back of the plane, and he's got his instructor, and he pushes the instructor all the way to the back, and they hit the back wall of the plane. And I'm watching this like, yo, this dude's freaking out right in front of me, right before I'm about to jump. And eventually the big dude musters up the courage. He's like, I got to do it. I got to do it. And they get to the door, and he and his instructor jump out. So that's when I'm left all alone in this plane with my instructor. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man, this is okay. I'm doing this. Even though I saw a dude almost lose it, I'm jumping out this plane. So I get to the front, I see the incredible view, and I'm just like, all right, let's go. So we tumble out the plane, and you know the feeling. It's like nothing else, man. You're free falling. It doesn't even feel like you're falling. And while we were going down, I started to have a hard time breathing. Like I couldn't get my lungs couldn't fully fill up with air. And with the wind rushing by my face, I just was really like gulping for breath. And one thing I didn't mention was that they were recording me. I purchased the video package on this thing. So I've got a dude in front of me who's videotaping me, and we're doing the free fall. My hands are out, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm going to pass out. I'm not getting enough oxygen. I'm about to pass out. But I knew that I was on camera. So you see me in the video, I'm smiling, but then I'm also looking like a wide mouth bass fish as I'm trying to gulp air. And literally, dude, right before I knew I was going to pass out, he pulls the cord. Like I was just saying goodbye to the world, and the cord pulls, and my shorts flew up because I'm wearing these basketball shorts. And you see it on the camera, you see it on the video. The cord is pulled, and all you see are my thighs as my shorts fly up. And we go through descent, and it's peaceful and beautiful, and I'm regaining consciousness. Mm-hmm. And he lands us, and it's just like super smooth, and my adrenaline kind of comes back down. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was insane. And then the cherry on top of this story is I go back into the hangar, and I see Sarah, and she asked me, how was your trip? And I said, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And I said, how was your flight? And she looks at me, and she says, after the last person jumped out, after you jumped out of the plane, there was no one left. The plane took a left and then nosedived. The plane nosedived straight down, and the plane got to the ground before I did.
Oh my.
And so, and here she is, like, 6 months pregnant, had no idea that the plane beats the divers down because it needs to conserve fuel. And there's another group of divers who are ready to jump. So she got a crazy ride herself. And I don't know if I'm going to go skydiving again, man, but I think I may have gotten my fill, but I'll never say never, but I will always remember that first jump.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's great. Oh man, that story took a lot of turns. I was like, the guy's going to freak out and then ruin the skydive for everyone or something. I was like, oh man.
And that guy his mom was jumping with him. So his mom went first, and then he freaked out, and he was like, no, I got to do it. Yeah. There's so many weird elements and it's all captured on video. Me almost passing out, and my white thighs as the ripcord was pulled. And yeah, it was crazy.
That's great. And I think we should use a screenshot from your wide mouth bass face as the artwork for this episode. What do you think?
Yo, I'll get you a screenshot, man, for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Skydiving is great. I'm glad I did it. I'm in the same boat with you. Although if someone were to offer it to me for free, I may go.
Yeah.
But who knows? Very cool, man. Very cool. That's great, man. That's great. So, the theme of our episode today is change. And, I was thinking about this earlier, like the most inspiring movies, you had the underdog, you have the person who turns their life around, and then the person who's just incredibly courageous. Those were the three I came up with. I'm sure there's more than that. But change is a very inspiring thing. And so before we even start talking about change, I think we should delve into this whole idea of identity, right? And so I have an idea of what identity is in my own mind, but like, how would you define identity? Which is a very, it's a big thing, but like, if you could just encapsulate it in a statement, what would you say identity is?
For me, identity is how we view ourselves, how we view ourselves, how we think about ourselves, what we think about ourselves. That to me, when you ask the question about identity, that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, with that being said, we have an understanding of how identity is formed, the good, the bad, all that stuff. There are some certain things that are outside of our control, but sometimes, especially when you're younger, people can give us our identity, right? And so that is, sometimes a very positive thing and sometimes a very negative thing. And so, what is your advice to your clients and then your podcast listeners about how to wrangle with that and just, because, sometimes it's just negative, and the people are just, they're coming from a place of hurt people, and then all of a sudden you're carrying this stuff around, which shouldn't have been with you in the first place, right? So what do you tell your clients and your listeners?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. A lot of times people are going to tell you how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to feel, how you're supposed to behave. And that could be coming from people who love you, from parents or teachers or friends or neighbors. Like throughout life, you will have no shortage of people who will tell you what you should be doing. And you're probably going to trust and listen to many of them. And sometimes you'll just find that the things that they tell you, they just don't feel good within you. They don't make you feel empowered. They don't make you feel inspired. Like there's that unsettled feeling when you did something that a person told you to do. Like maybe I had a little voice that was like, I don't know about that, but you did it anyway. And then you had that unsettled feeling within your gut. And when I'm talking to people about this, like I'm talking about that, their intuition, your conscience. And that unsettled feeling, that's your inner self letting you know that, hey, who you really are is not the person that you're being. Like the person that you really are wouldn't do those things. And I think early on when you're working on forming identity, oftentimes what happens is you have those feelings of something doesn't feel right more than you have the feelings that things do feel right. That was the case for me. I struggled with identity. I'm biracial. My father's Black, my mother's white. And when I moved around 10 years old, I started to get questions from kids when they would ask, what are you? And I didn't know how to answer that question at first. I didn't know what they meant, but they were referring to my skin color. I said, well, what are you? Are you Black? Are you Hispanic? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you what are you? And that right there had me questioning my identity. And then as I would get older and I would have different groups of friends, like I had a white group of friends and I had a Black group of friends, and my white group of friends would tend to steer, their shoulds would pull me in one way, and my Black group of friends, their shoulds would pull me in a different way. So anytime that I would do something in a manner that I was trying to fit in with a certain group, I would get that weird feeling in my gut, whether it was saying something like they said it or saying something because they pressured me to say it. Like I would get that feeling in my gut. So when I'm talking to people about identity, I always go back to being able to trust that feeling. Even if you aren't certain as to what your identity is, like your body will tell you, like it'll tell you what is aligned. And developing that relationship with your intuition, we call it intuition, gut, conscience, all those things. Developing that relationship where you notice it when it starts speaking to you is so key, especially when you're looking to form your identity, because again, you're going to have people telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you're supposed to do, all this stuff. And that's them just dropping, their shoulds on you, where what's true for you may not be what they're sharing. So having that tight relationship with your gut, with your intuition is so important to be able to figure out ultimately who you are as an individual.
Right. Yeah. No, that's all really good information. Now, you're talking about doing things that don't sit right with you, as far as that just doesn't feel right. Is there ever a time where something doesn't feel right, but it is right? And I guess where I'm going with that is, when you said that, I was just thinking about The Karate Kid, because it's a great movie.
Yes.
But like, he's sitting here doing all this stuff, and he's like, why am I doing all of this? And then, the reveal comes out. It's like, wax on, wax off, boom.
Totally.
Now you'll be able to beat all of Cobra Kai and maybe the master as well. You know what I'm saying? So,
it's a great question. I really like where you're going with this question, by the way.
yeah. So sometimes what feels right is also what feels good or easy, right? So how do you, how do you delineate between those two, and know when this is an intuition thing that's like, okay, definitely this is someone projecting onto me what I should be doing, and also the thing that I stated earlier about, I just don't like this because it doesn't feel good, which a lot of things that are great don't feel good.
100%. 100%. So I remember in my life moments where I was offered things, and I would have different reactions. So here's an example. I remember being 17 years old and being offered a joint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was offered that joint, I had that voice, that moment in me that was like, I shouldn't do this.
Sure.
So having that feeling of, I probably shouldn't do this. Like, let's log that feeling. Boom. I also remember when I was young and my parents offered me up a plate of broccoli, and I said, I don't want this.
Right.
Now, I had the same sort of rejection, like, of the thing, but the source of that rejection was very different. On one side, there was a feeling, like a gut feeling, like this is not right for me. Like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This does not feel beneficial, doesn't feel healthy, doesn't feel uplifting, doesn't feel exciting for me. And that was being offered something that really didn't align with who I knew myself to be. In this case, it was the joint. The other side is doing something is saying no simply because I didn't want something, because I didn't like the taste of it, because yada, yada, all that stuff. However, there was no part in my gut that said I should not be eating this broccoli. Like, right. Fundamentally, I should not be doing this for a moral reason or an ethical reason. None of that came up when I'm offered the plate of broccoli. So being able to discern between those two things is definitely very important, because you're 100% right. There's going to be things that you'd be asked to do, maybe by a mentor, like a Mr. Miyagi, where you're like, I don't understand this. I don't want to do this. There's no part of me that wants to sit here and paint this fence. Mm-hmm. Right. However, when you do a check-in, if you're, internally, I doubt Daniel was saying, this feels fundamentally misaligned with who I know myself to be. Right. I doubt that's what was going on. It was more like, this seems stupid. Why am I doing this? I don't understand it. And that is the ego. That's the ego just not wanting to do something because it's different, or it's challenging, or you just simply don't want to. So there's a difference between the ego that pops up in those moments versus your conscience or your intuition that's speaking to you. And you're right. At times it might be confusing, right? You may not necessarily know which one, but it's in going through the process of working on connecting with that part of you and listening to your gut that you can then begin to discern when something is fundamentally misaligned with who you know yourself to be versus something you just don't want to do because you simply are feeling emotional.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good explanation of the difference between the two. Now,
like, if you feel crummy afterwards because you did something, that's probably the misalignment with your character, right? Like, I really should not have, whatever, lied in this case, or whatever it is.
Right.
You don't feel crummy the next day after you eat broccoli. You aren't thinking of and regretting that decision.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And your conscience isn't racking you and
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You just may not want to eat the broccoli, which I get it. I used to put up a fight so much about eating my veggies, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're just like, Ma, I see ya.
Yeah. And I got a daughter now, and I'm like, eat your broccoli, girl. Come on.
There you
So
go.
coming right back at me.
There you go. That's awesome, man. Now, how do you help your clients with deprogramming, right? Because that's a big part of our identity, and I guess I'm starting to talk about change too. But that whole idea of deprogramming, like, what do you tell them to do? Is there certain exercises, things that they should read, listen to? What do you tell them? Here's the sage advice. Here's what's worked for me. Because, based on everything I know about you, you have changed significantly. And so what's that conversation like?
Yeah. So I mean, from a 10,000 foot level, it definitely looks like exploring those beliefs that serve you and don't serve you. So, a belief that may not serve you is that it's very hard to make money, right? If that's the belief that you hold, then you might go through your life thinking that it's very hard to make money, and that might make, your financial reality pretty challenging. So from a very high level view, part of the thing that I do with my clients is we explore their different beliefs in different areas, and we see, do you have a belief that's really not serving you? To bring it down closer to the ground, one of the things that I do, and I always recommend to people, is getting clear as to what's most important to you. And those show up in your personal values, right? Like your values and those belief systems, that's how you view the world, right? Those are the criteria through which you make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have an idea as to what's most important to you, then it can be challenging to make decisions. Life can feel confusing. You can feel like you don't have that direction, and that deprogramming, you might just sit and hang out in a bunch of beliefs that really don't serve you. So the tool or the exercise that I use is sit down and get clear, like what is it that is most important to you? And so, a way to do that is you can go on Google and search list of values, and you'll find a number of blog articles that have, listed 100 different values. And then you go through and you read all those different words, and you see which ones really resonate with you. Maybe it's truth, maybe it's health, maybe it's family, maybe it's balance, whatever. And then once you have your short list, I recommend 3 to 5, define for yourself what each one of those values means to you, because family might mean something different to me than it does for you. I have a really close friend of mine, and he was orphaned when he was young. And so growing up, his idea of family was not blood, because he didn't have blood family, or he didn't have any blood family that he knew of for a long time. So family for him were the people who adopted him, right? So the way he defines family is very different than the way I define family. I grew up in a household with a mother and father and 2 sisters and cousins and aunties and grandparents, all that stuff. So getting clear as to what your personal values mean to you is incredibly important. So once you have those things, you start to see where the deprogramming opportunities lie. Because here on one hand, you've gone through the exercise of saying for yourself what is important to you and what those important things mean to you. And then on the other hand, you might have some beliefs that clash with what you've said are important. And so it's in those moments that you realize, oh, wow, you know what? I have some beliefs that aren't serving me. They aren't serving me with who I truly know myself to be. And that's where the deprogramming comes into place. So then you can start adopting some new beliefs, because and this is something my coach has told me that I really love. Beliefs are like clothing, right? Like I'm wearing a shirt right now, and I can take this shirt off if I don't like how it fits, and I can put a new shirt on. Beliefs are the same way. I can take one belief and I can discard it, or I can grab a new belief, I can wear it on, and I can see if I like how it fits, right? So, you might have a belief. Maybe some person grows up in a household where they believe a certain ethnic group is inferior. That's a belief. It's like a piece of clothing. And they might wear that belief for a little while. And then at one point, that shirt may not fit well anymore. And so you might discard that belief and adopt the belief that, we are all equal. And you walk around wearing that belief on and seeing how your life feels with that new belief on. So that to me is like that deprogramming process, going through and looking at what beliefs are really not serving me. And you can figure out what's not serving you by looking at the areas in your life where you keep experiencing challenges and breakdowns. If you keep having challenges over and over and over and over and over in a relationship, or with your health or whatever, there might be some underlying beliefs that are contributing to that challenge repeating itself. And that's opportunity for you to see what beliefs are there so that you can work on the deprogramming.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like through just life experience, as far as the ethnic group thing goes, you meet some people, and then it's right in your face. Your beliefs are challenged. You're just like, well,
yep.
I can keep believing the things that I grew up learning, but everything that I'm seeing is just clashing with those beliefs. So I do understand, or I do agree with you that beliefs to some degree are like clothing, as far as what we believe to the world to be, or what we believe, whether it's making money is hard, or I don't know, you can, I'm just trying to find a better example than that, but or a different example.
Like, I used to believe that all police were terrible.
Sure.
And all they wanted to do was get me in trouble.
Right.
And as a kid, I did things that caused the police to take notice of me and come and check me on my actions. So I had been arrested. I've been cuffed, and I've all sorts of stuff, man. And I just formed this belief that, like, the police were just out to get me. And then as I got older, I started participating in my community more, and I would see police come out and participate in the community. Sure. They weren't there to arrest everybody. They weren't there to profile me. They were there to protect and serve. That's what their job is. And I would see that, and that would clash with the belief that all cops are terrible. You know what I mean? And so you're right. Life was going to present you with moments where your beliefs get checked. And so I had opportunities to decide, am I going to just believe that all police officers are horrible, or am I going to adopt a new belief? And then I end up marrying my wife, and her best friend, her brother, is a police officer, and I get to spend all this time around him. So sure. What would things be like if I held on to that belief that all police officers were awful? And so you're totally right. Life is going to present those moments, and you're going to have a choice. Do you want to keep believing what you believe, or do you want to adopt a new belief and see how things feel, see how things turn out?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you totally about that. Just going out and I think just experiencing and trying things, I think, is very helpful with breaking down those beliefs, whether it's asking somebody to be in a video that you're making, and then you expect them to say no, and then they're like, yeah, let's totally do it. Something along those lines. I guess just to circle back to that question, though, when it comes to, I'll use my own example just to fully pinpoint where I'm going with this. So growing up, one of the scripts that was running in my mind is that I'm going to turn out like my father. I think that's a very common thing that young boys struggle with. Or, if you have a father that you're just really, you look up to, then that's a very empowering thing. But how do you help people with those kind of deprogramming things? And obviously you're not a psychologist, so you don't have people sit down on your couch, or maybe you do, but they're not laying, hey, you want to put your feet up, that's going to cost you more money. No, but how do you help them deprogram with those kind of things?
No, that's a great question. So with that, I have this belief that the universe is abundant, that the universe doesn't know the word no or not. It always looks at things in the affirmative. So if you're walking through life saying, I don't want to be like my dad, I don't want to be like my dad, then I would remove the phrase don't, and that's what you're going to get served up. I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my dad. And an example of that I like to share with my clients is, and you listening right now, you can do this. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. I want you to just think of a empty space, empty your mind. There's nothing in there. And then do not think of a bouncing red ball. don't think of a bouncing red ball. Whatever you do, do not think of a red ball, a red shiny ball that's bouncing around. Just don't do it. Don't think of the bouncing red ball. And the reason why I do that example is because if you focus on the not and the don't, that's exactly what's going to pop up in your brain. So what I do instead, in your case, it would be, instead of trying to not become like your father, let's get an idea of who it is that you would like to become.
Right.
What is it that you want to be? What type of man do you want to be? What lights you up? And let's get something for you to pursue and work towards, rather than avoid and try to run away from. Because those are two very different things, right?
Right.
If you have an idea of who it is you want to be, who is the person that you want to become, and now we can carve out a path for you to go and become that person. Now you're going to be focusing on becoming the greater version of you. And if your focus is on that, that's what's going to happen, rather than let me focus on not being like my dad. And so that's where I take that question. And that's something that comes up all the time, man, because you're so right. I mean, the people who raise us have such an influence over us. I mean, go back to my story I talked about in high school. Everybody around me went to college. So that's just what I did. I went to the college that my dad went to because that was the only college exposure I had. He wore a Florida Gators hat. I saw that. We would watch football games. I knew that he went there, and okay, that's where I'm going to go. So it could have been real easy for me to continue down that path of being just like my dad and pursuing becoming a physician. But at some point I said, no, what is it that I want to do? What is it that lights me up? And that's been a 20 plus year journey myself, just to answer that question. But the whole time I've been trying to figure out, what is it that Matthew wants to experience? Who is it that I would like to become? So that's how I answer that question, man. Let's start forming an idea of, who the individual wants to become. Then you can create a plan to take steps in that direction.
Yeah, that's great. And as you were just going through that, I was the person that I thought of was my 10th grade social studies teacher, because once I met him, he changed the trajectory of my life. I was like, this is the kind of man I want to be like. And it was the first time I really saw someone else just like, yes, that I didn't know what I was aiming at previously, but this is a great example. And then, it definitely, changed many of the choices that I made. So thanks for sharing that. And also, I didn't know you were a Florida Gator. I don't know if we can continue this interview, honestly.
You know what, man? Living in Atlanta, I get that almost every time I talk about being a Gator, because this is not Gator country, but hey, man, it is what it is. I get it. Are you, what is your affinity?
I have to root for, I'm a UGA. I didn't even go to UGA or Georgia Tech, but this is home territory. My people all have come from those schools. And so I honestly just root for them just so my friends won't be depressed.
That's too funny. Well, hey, there's still the SEC association there, so we can still be on the same team, man.
There it is. Okay, so with that being said, and looking at what you want to become and accomplish and your values, how does an individual become self-empowered? And I guess if you want to just go back to your life and the way you changed, maybe that's the best route to take. Or if you know of other proven practices and strategies, maybe share those. But how does an individual become self-empowered?
Well, I think part of it comes down to what you had talked about earlier, which is mindset. Because if you look at the word self-empowered and you break that down, it means that you have the power. And so that's a belief. Remember, going back to the beliefs, it's a belief to say that, you know what, I have the power. A lot of folks may not hold that belief. Maybe they might say other people have the power. My boss has the power. The president has the power. My parents have the power. My teachers have the power. So part of becoming self-empowered is embracing the idea that you have the power. You are powerful. And what the power that I'm speaking about is the power to choose. To choose your actions, to choose your thoughts. A lot of thoughts run automatic, and there are thoughts that you can choose. So choosing your actions, choosing your thoughts, and choosing how you feel about something, right? If somebody smacks you in the face, you have a moment to choose how you feel about it and what you're going to do about it. And so that is the essence of being self-empowered, to recognize that you always have a choice in every scenario. You may not always be able to choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. Always. And so that is like the essence of it. And as you start to adopt that idea and then play that idea out in real life, you start to see where you are giving your power away and where you are claiming your power. Giving your power away looks like saying, well, the reason my life is like this is because my parents did X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. Or the reason why, I struggle with money is because I was never taught it in school. Right? Like those are examples of giving your power away.
Sure.
Rather than saying, you know what, there were choices that I have made that has led me to where I am today. And so for me in my life, I did not claim my power for a long time. My parents were pretty hands-off when it came to my higher education, meaning they supported me in going to college, but that was about it. Like they supported me emotionally, they supported me financially, but the whole figuring out what I wanted to do, getting clear as to what was the best university, picking my major, all of that, they were just very hands-off. And so in my late teens and early 20s, when I was struggling to figure out what I quote unquote should be doing, and we can get into a whole other conversation around the judgments of that should. But as I was having a hard time because I didn't feel clear, I felt very lost, I felt I didn't have a lot of confidence in those areas, I started to blame my parents. Why didn't you push me hard enough, mom and dad? Why didn't you force me to just stick to one thing? Why did you give me the freedom to explore all these different things? Right? The grass is always greener. Because I had friends whose parents were super strict and they wanted the freedom that I was given. So there I was in those years giving my power away. And so as I was giving my power away, I wasn't being proactive. I wasn't doing anything to improve my situation, or at least I wasn't doing a whole lot to improve my situation. So becoming self-empowered for me started when I really recognized that I held the keys to my own life, that I was the one who got to paint the picture of what I wanted my life to be like. Nobody else held that brush. I held that paintbrush. And that was a slow process. And for me, it was a hard process to swallow because what I had to realize was that I spent a lot of years blaming other people, blaming my parents for not giving me the financial knowledge to be able to balance my checkbook, right? Blaming my parents again for not pushing me hard enough to stick to one thing. Blaming my coaches in soccer for not believing in me, and therefore I didn't have the confidence to go for the varsity team. Like I look back and I saw all those moments where I had an opportunity to choose. I could have chosen to keep that power for myself and then be proactive and do something about it. But I chose to give that power away and play a victim. And so that route to becoming self-empowered begins with recognizing that choice and then working on cultivating that little bit of space in between something happening to you and then what you choose, how you choose to react to it. Because in that space is where your power lies, truly. And that's the beginning of the process. So when I work with people, we start and we look at that and it's revealed in your language and in your conversation, whether you're giving your power away or whether you're adopting your power, whether you're being a victim, whether you're being proactive. All of that stuff is revealed when a person speaks. And so my job becomes easy in that aspect because I can help steer people back on track to say, hey, let's examine this and see exactly where you're giving your power away. Because I know and I believe that your greatest version of your life, the dream life you want, is a life that is within your power and is only going to happen when you really claim your power and you be proactive and go for it. So that's how I help folks and help myself become more self-empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking, I'm sure you've heard this quote, but it's life is 10% of what happens, or life is 10% of what happens and 90% of how you react to it.
Totally, man.
And yeah, I that's one of my favorite things to look at, just to remind myself. And victim mentality is a huge, it is such a just an anchor that weighs people down, that they just don't understand how powerful, how negatively powerful it is. And then when you realize it, you're just like, why was I allowing XYZ to, or this person or that person or whatever the case may be, to stop me from achieving what I could and becoming what I could. So,
yeah, I mean, it's scary to come to the realization that you are in control of your life, because that means you have to take responsibility for all the things, the great things and the not so great things, right? Like as an athlete, I got to take responsibility for when I scored a hat trick in soccer and we won the tournament. I got to claim that and be like, wow, we did great things because of me. But then I had to also take responsibility for the times that I broke the law and let my parents down, let myself down. Like I had to own that too. So taking full responsibility for your life is something that is scary, because that means you gotta claim it all, not just the great stuff. And that's just part of it though, right? Like that has to happen in order for you to truly begin moving down the path towards designing and experiencing the life that you want. It doesn't happen when you ditch responsibility. So you got to just take responsibility for all of it. And over the process of doing that, you can develop the habits and the character to then be okay with that. Like today, I am perfectly okay with the consequences of all of my actions. And sometimes life hits me with stuff and I have to just sit there and be like, wow, you know what? I created this. Okay. I created this mess. Cool. I'm just going to clean it up. And it is what it is. But I'll take that any day over being in that victim space, because it's just not fun being in that space.
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, we're not going to get better by neglecting our responsibilities.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, like you didn't wake up in time to catch the bus. That's like whatever the example is, but that's an example that just came to mind. Like you didn't wake up in time. Like there's no blaming XYZ that kept you up last night. That doesn't make your life better. Yeah. It's like, all right, take responsibility for your life. It will change your life, even if it feels terrible.
Yeah. Yep. So. Because we've all done things that we don't want to own. And sometimes it's doing things that are uncomfortable, like waking up early. Sometimes you got to wake up early in order to do the things to become the person that you want to become. And it's not comfortable when you went to bed at 2 a.m. and you got to wake up at 5 a.m.
Sure.
But that's just the stuff you got to do. And so that's where it really does help to just take that full ownership, make that commitment to yourself, and do those small things that over time have big impact.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I want to pivot this conversation to talking about, because this episode is going to drop in the new year. And so, you know what happens? New year, new me. We've seen the meme.
Oh, yes.
We've seen the people crawl back into their habits very shortly thereafter. And I was looking at some research the other day, and it says something like 80% of people drop off by February of their resolutions, 90% by the end of the year. So why do New Year's resolutions have such a high failure rate? And well, let's start with that. Why do New Year's resolutions have such a high failure rate?
Man, I have thought so much about this because I have failed at so many, 90+% of my own New Year's resolutions. Mm-hmm. So I would study this, what is going on? And I'm a big person who's into productivity and efficiency and goal setting and all that. So this is something that I came up with. One of the reasons I believe people fail at New Year's resolutions is because we take 3 months off during the holidays. When October hits, it's Halloween. And we start to take a little bit of time off on our diet, eat a little bit more sweets, take a little bit of time off maybe on our exercise. And then November hits, and now it's Thanksgiving. And so we might take a week off for a vacation, and there goes that healthy lifestyle we've been living, and we slip a little bit more, and we give ourselves permission to eat this or do that or whatever it is. And then December hits, and boom, again, another holiday and New Year's and all that stuff. So I think a part of the equation is that we take those months off, meaning we don't hold ourselves to the same standard of health and well-being that we do in the other months of the year. And then when the new year comes around, we want to set some big goal. Nobody sets a little New Year's resolution. It's not like I can do 10 push-ups. I want to have a resolution to be able to do 12 push-ups. No, you're like, I want to do 100 push-ups, right? So we set these big goals, and resolution is a very firm word. There's not much wiggle room or flexibility in a resolution. You're resolute about this. So we set these big goals coming off of 3 months of taking some breaks with our lifestyle. And then we have this big high bar that we're trying to set without any wiggle room built in. And a lot of times we don't have a plan. We just say, I want to hit this big thing, and you jump in without a plan. So that right there are ingredients for failure. You don't want to jump into a big change without having some momentum.
Sure.
You don't necessarily want to have a big change. And a lot of times it's in an area that we aren't a master in. It's an area that we're novices in. So it's like you might have a fitness goal where you're a beginner in fitness, but you want to get to an advanced level. And so it isn't realistic a lot of times. And then you don't have a plan and you don't give yourself room for failure. And so you start your New Year's resolution to dramatically transform your body, and day 10 hits and you don't hit your alarm clock in the morning, you sleep right through it or whatever it is, and you miss a day. And then now you're like, well, the whole resolution is shot because I've missed a day. And now you're beating yourself up and judging yourself and criticizing, saying, see, I knew you couldn't do it. You couldn't even do it for 10 days. Man, you are so lazy, and you just proved it to yourself. And boom, you just pile on more shame and fear and doubt and all that stuff. And so I see that happening so often when it comes to New Year's resolutions. I've done that myself in years past. And so I think that is one of the big reasons why 80% of people don't make it to February. And then most people, vast majority of people, aren't going to hold their resolution throughout the year. And what's really great about that, though, is that each one of those things has a solution, right? From not having momentum to setting these really lofty goals in an area that you'd have very little experience, to jumping into something without a plan, to not giving yourself any wiggle room or room to just be human. You can combat every single one of those things, and there's a solution to every single one of those things. So there is hope, everybody. If you want to keep setting New Year's resolutions, like there's hope for you to be able to set them and crush them. It can absolutely happen. You just might need to look at your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, just making sure you just do something. I in a previous podcast, I said, write down the phrase, some beats none, put it somewhere you can see it, because that's, I think that's key. A little bit of something is better than none.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Baby steps are key, even though they don't sound all glamorous and cool. Yeah. That's awesome.
But things are all like big change is always a result of baby steps, right? Like I grew up in California and we had earthquakes, right? So an earthquake, you're just kind of chilling, you're going through your day, you're eating your breakfast, and then all of a sudden the freaking world is shaking and things are falling off the shelves, and you think, wow, that came out of nowhere. But really, that earthquake is a result of a buildup of pressure and stress and power over time. It didn't just happen, like the slip of that pressure happened in a moment, but the buildup took time. It was little baby steps, right? Like that power was building until suddenly it slipped, and that's the earthquake. And so, the Great Pyramid of Giza is those beautiful pyramids out there. But guess what? They were literally laid brick by brick, so that today you can look at it and you see the finished picture and you think, wow, what a beautiful thing. But everything is like little by little by little until ultimately you have something grand and big and transformative. That's just how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Journey of 1,000 Steps. I'm just full of all these quotes. Journey
all
of
these
1,000
great
Steps.
It's so true, man. Like there's a reason why those sayings stick around.
Absolutely.
Because they're true.
Definitely. Very
right?
Cool. All right. So regarding your journey of change, what were the things that you read, listened to, had come into your life, relationships, people that you engage with? What were those things that were just really transformative? Because we all had those things, and I'm curious of what yours were, just to kind of give people a reference to what they should maybe go check out themselves.
For me, it was a culmination of a lot of things over a long period of time. I think that's probably the same for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what's interesting is some things that were introduced to me early that I didn't understand were reintroduced to me later that now I fully embrace. And one of them is a book that I totally recommend for everybody, and that's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. My dad introduced that book to me when I was a teenager, and I wasn't about to read anything that wasn't fiction when I was a teen. I wasn't about to read anything, period, man. I didn't like to read when I was a teenager, but my dad introduced this book to me. I kind of skimmed it and put it aside. But I had no idea that 15 years later, I would be, getting close to 30 and the book came back up and I would read it and it would change my life. So that is a book that I recommend for everybody. And, no matter what stage in life, there's a version of the book for you, and the reason why I love that book is because it talks about these timeless things called principles and living a life according to principles. And that idea for me was very stabilizing because I was somebody who lived my life according to my emotions. And my emotions were all over the place, man. Even as a man, because a lot of folks think that men don't have emotions. Nah, I had emotions. You just didn't see them. I stuffed those things down. I wore so many masks. I would never let you know that I was hurt or that I felt tiny, tiny, small or weak. You just wouldn't know. And so being able to shift that and live a life coming from a principle center, being able to feel my emotions, but not be fully swayed by them, right? Like all of that was instrumental for me. So that was one of the first things was that book. And again, it entered my life when I was a teen and it really had its impact when I was about 30. So that book was huge for me. I was a reader when I got into college and I just started picking up all sorts of stuff, man. And some of it was self-help books. Some of it were different books of, just kind of like timeless books, The Alchemist and different things like that. So reading for me was big in, it allowed me to adopt different perspectives and different perspectives exposed me to different beliefs. And that, we've talked about beliefs and wearing on beliefs and all that. I did a lot of that. I would just kind of think of my life like, well, what if I thought about, what if I looked at money this way? What if I looked at my health that way? And so having that open mind was huge for me. So adopting an open mindedness about life, I think is huge because it's your actions and your relationships and your thoughts and all of that has contributed to who you are today. And so if you want to make a change in your life, you want to experience different things, you got to be changing elements of yourself. So having that open mind is key. Another thing that I adopted that worked for me was being proactive. Being proactive. Definitely. Because when I was feeling lost, I kind of wanted to just sit there and have someone rescue me. They kind of teach that if you get lost in the woods, stay put. Sure. But if you're lost in life, don't stay put. You won't find your answer by staying put. Like you got to go and try things and explore things. So I adopted this mentality that I was going to try things. And it started in college. I took so many different classes during those 2 years that I went undeclared. I was like, I'm going to study dinosaurs. I'm going to study ancient Rome. I'm going to study statistics. I'm going to study photography. I'm going to study film. I'm going to study music. I'm going to study math. And I just tried all these things. My dad told me, and I remember this, he was like, if you don't know what you want, start weeding out what you don't want. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I wasn't clear on what I wanted, but I could sure make a list of all the things I don't want. And as I would try different classes or work different small jobs, I would say, oh, I don't like this about this type of job. So let me make sure that I don't do that in the future. Or I didn't really enjoy that area of study. So let me make sure I don't do that. Or, oh, I did enjoy that part of the job, or I did enjoy that subject. And being proactive is what helped me to kind of form my lists of what I liked and what I didn't like. And one of the most influential powers in my life actually happened in Atlanta when I came across this community called the Your Day Balance Game community. And what the Your Day Balance Game is it's a health and fitness platform that's powered by love and balance. So imagine a game that you can play that as you play the game, you get your health. And as you play the game, you gain greater sense of purpose. And that's what Your Day Balance Game is. And that's what it offered to me. And, physically, it's a space here in Atlanta, a wellness community here in Atlanta. They're all about fitness. They're all about lifestyle. They're all about consciousness. And so I was brought into that community and that wellness center through a job that I worked at that was it was a job that was very focused on health and wealth as part of their corporate culture. And so the health component, we would go to the Your Day Center, and that's where we would work out and do different things. And so I got exposed to like these different ways of thinking. And what was really cool is I remember I said that when I was a teenager, 7 Habits was a book that I was exposed to. Well, when I went into the Your Day Center, 7 Habits was one of the books that I saw there. And I was like, that's interesting. Why is this book coming back around? And that community and that group of people, you know, they were really interested in growing and changing themselves, not just in their fitness and not just in their lifestyle, like their habits, but also in their consciousness, like the way they related to life and the way they viewed life. And so I picked up a lot of tools and a lot of knowledge from that community. And that's a community I'm still a big part of today. And so that community was huge for me. And last couple of things that were really instrumental was the idea of community itself. And that's something that everybody can seek out, is community, meaning a group of people who are there to support you and empower you, provide you with assistance and guidance and accountability. Mm-hmm. You know, that community is so key because we don't achieve anything great by ourselves. Other people are always involved. And life can feel really lonely when you're trying to do big things by yourself or solve big problems by yourself or just trying to figure out, you know, who you are. When I was trying to do that by myself, it felt lonely and it felt hard. But as soon as I became part of a community, I was able to get some answers. I was able to get some assistance. I was able to get some different perspectives. So everybody out there can be seeking out community, and you can be evaluating whether the community that you're currently a part of is a community that's lifting you up, is a community that is inspiring you or empowering you. Because, you know, one of the things that my parents used to say is you are the 5 people you hang out with. Mm-hmm. And that's so true. People you hang out with most, like the energy that you're around the most, you become. So community becomes such a huge part in overall growing and changing and transforming your life because they end up having a huge influence on you. So look at your communities, and if you don't have one, go seek some out because there's definitely a community out there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. And, you know, you don't really think about that when you're younger. You're just like, oh, I enjoy being around this person. They're funny. We have good times together, I guess. But you don't really think like, how is this person helping me in my trajectory in life?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you want to be a winner. You got to hang out with winners, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. It's
just the way it is, man. It's like,
yeah.
It's not personal, it's principle, right? Everything is energy. That's one of the principles that governs my life. And so when I look at that, I look at how people are showing up. You know, where are these people resonating? Where are they calibrating in life? And if I'm wanting my energy to be high and to be at a certain frequency, then I got to make sure the energy of those folks around me is up there. And so if I'm not surrounding myself with empowering people who are pushing themselves and challenging themselves and working towards different things, like, then I'm going to become like other folks. And so that's where that is such a huge part. And it's not personal. It's the same case for every single person. Surrounding yourself with powerful people is always going to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And also being a powerful person to other people in the right context and situation. Obviously, if your girlfriend or boyfriend is needing you to constantly lift them up, then that might not be the best situation. But yeah, there's definitely a time and place and situation where you should be helping people, and you just have to gauge that for yourself, I guess.
Yeah, you know, it's well put, because you're always being influenced and you're always influencing. Right? It happens both ways all the time. So, you know, you have to be aware of who you're being influenced by and who's watching you and who's doing what you're doing and saying what you're saying, because there's somebody who's watching you.
Sure, yeah.
Whether it's a friend or a classmate or maybe somebody you don't even know, someone's watching you, and your actions are giving them permission to do and say and be the way that you are. Right? And so, I mean, that's a lot of what peer pressure ends up being. It's like you're watching other kids and you want to be like those other kids, or siblings, like younger siblings who are watching older siblings and doing what they're doing. So If the older sibling starts to act out and get in trouble, the younger sibling does the same thing. Always influencing and being influenced. And so it's understanding that both those things are happening and growing an awareness around what's happening in both of those areas.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good thought, and it's a very convicting thought. So now that you're an adult, you're an entrepreneur, you're a father, you're a surprise skydiver, you're a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
If you could go back and speak to your younger self, knowing everything you know, right? Because we look back on our lives and we're just like, man, why did I not know that? It would have changed my life. What is one thing that you would say to yourself to help yourself along your journey? You can do a couple things if you'd like, but just pick at least one thing that you would say to yourself if you could just hop in a time machine and have that conversation.
I would tell myself, I'd say, hey, Matthew, listen up, man. If something doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel like a smart idea or a good idea, trust your gut, man. Trust your gut and muster up the courage to do what feels right for you rather than what somebody else might be leaning you towards. Because that was a big theme in my life, like doing things because I thought other people were expecting me to do those things. Whether it was dress a certain way or listen to a certain style of music or do a certain thing or drink a certain thing, whatever. So many moments in my life, I would ignore my gut and I would do the thing because I wanted approval from some other people. And now looking back, I realize that the only approval that matters is me approving of who I'm being.
Yes, sir.
Me approving of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And those moments that I chose to go against my gut, they almost always turned out poorly.
Sure.
I mean, that's how I ended up in jail. That's how I ended up. I mean, I've had 3 or 4 different occasions, run-ins with the police where, when I was young, my parents got called and they had to come pick me up or, things like that. Or when I got older, I finally did get arrested. And in almost each one of those, I just did not listen to my gut. And what happens is if you don't listen to your gut and you keep ignoring it, then you're going to lose touch with that part of you. That part of you that knows things when your mind or your ego doesn't want to, like that part of you knows stuff. And so for me, I just lost touch with that. And I really didn't have a tight relationship with my intuition or my gut or my conscience, whatever word you want to use. And so that's what I would tell myself, man, like be your own person, because that journey to discovering who you aren't going to get there by continuing to be what other people tell you to be or do what other people tell you to do. And we talked about it, right? Being able to discern whether something really doesn't align with you because it just goes against who you know yourself to be or who you feel yourself to be versus not wanting to do something just because you simply don't want to do it.
Sure. And
I would tell that to my younger self, trust your gut and have the courage to stand up, the courage to stand what I feel is right in the face of adversity or in the face of bullies. I had encounters with different bullies or just in the face of friends who wanted to do things that I really didn't want to do. Like it takes a lot of guts to stand up in those moments. And I didn't have a lot of guts in those moments when I was younger. And so having, learning and developing that courage as I've gotten older, that's been a process. And it's gotten me where I am today. So I don't have those regrets, but boy, I could have avoided some really, really hard lessons by just listening to my gut.
Sure. Absolutely. That's, listen to your gut, guys. Except for when you're in a quiet room and it starts making noises and you're taking the test. Then pretend
that's when you got to ignore it.
Yeah, just pretend that it doesn't exist at that point. Just be like, oh, I don't know whose stomach that is, but that's just weird.
That's when you don't want it to exist. You're like, oh my gosh, everybody just heard that.
Yeah, exactly. Most inopportune times is when it happens. But
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end of the interview. Here's what I like to do at the very end of my interviews. What I like to do is this thing called freestyle rapping. I'll wrap up the interview, just throw in some things that we talked about. And
Dude, you're awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's a game plan. It's just gotta do it. So here we go. All right, gonna throw this beat on. All right, yo, check it. I'm coming up raw. I'm having it all. Kind of like Matthew Bivens when I'm living, spitting freestyles. I'm an individual, gotta go at the principles all the freaking time. And yo, I'm freestyling, talking about balance. That's what we need, and a whole bunch of love. Spit a freestyle, don't be a thug, do the right thing. That's what I say. Yo, I just grab it, I gotta be proactive all the freaking time. That's how I rhyme, talking about people that need to listen. Don't be a victim. Yo, you keep hitting in this freaking life. Gotta keep going. It's kinda like Rocky. Can't even knock me down. Yo, I come through around, spitting freestyles. Yo, I'm just trying to be true. Ask if things are serving you all the freaking time. And that's what I say. Yo, I'm on a mission. Listen to intuition all the freaking time. I'm talking about your gut. Say what? And yo, I gotta change, rearrange all the things in my mind. Come through and rhyme. Yo, I'm different. Spit a freestyle. I'm here up on a mission to change a bunch of lives. Kinda like my dude on the other end. Call him a friend. Surround yourself with good people. That's what I say every single day. Talking about things that I'm influencing. What am I putting out? And that's what I do. I cut with styles all the freaking time. Yo, I'm just giving these people community. That's what I gotta do. Gotta be a person that uplifts, so I can be uplifted. And yo, I'm just gifting rhymes all the time. And that's how I go. Spit a freestyle, up in the flow. Talk about a choice. We all got a choice to be your best self and use your voice. And that's what I say with these rhymes all the time. And that's what I say. Freestyle shine, spit off the top. And that's how I go. That's what I said with having it all flow.
Yo, man, that is awesome.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You show up. I love it. Has anybody ever freestyled back at you?
No. One time someone started cussing me out, though. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, hey, put the beat back on. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. You're like, I can do both. I can, not only will I freestyle, but I also dish you and your mama. And
I do not have freestyle skills, but you should be the only one who's freestyling on the episode.
Yeah. I've actually had someone throw a beatbox one time, but then it just came out super distorted. It was not that the beatboxing was awful. It was great, but it just came out. Sound quality was really bad. But anyways, man, dude, thank you so much for the knowledge that you were dropping. Thank you for yeah. I mean, I'm excited to share this. It's going to be January. People are going to be pumped up. You're going to pump them up even more. They might rename you Matthew Anabolic Steroid Bivens. Because I got you in my veins, brother. But anyways.
I'm excited for this to drop. And I have intentions, if you're open to it, of me publishing our conversation on my feed, which should send some people your way, to send some listeners your way. That's one of the things I like to do, just kind of show appreciation. And this was awesome, man. I think, if you don't mind me giving some, like, are we still recording?
Yeah, go for it, man. We're still going.
Oh, okay, cool. I just think the way that we had conversations before this, and the questions that you had for me to roll this conversation along forward, they were outstanding. And I think your questions really allowed us to cover a lot of areas, but we didn't go across too many areas. Like, we were allowed to go deep. And I think that's where a big impact is made, when we can really pierce and hit something on a deep level. So I feel like we hit a number of different areas on a deep level. And, we had stories and anecdotes and all this stuff. And again, I go back to the space that you created for this conversation to happen. So I just give a lot of props to you and a lot of gratitude for facilitating such a cool conversation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for all that. I don't even know how to respond, so I'm just going to say thank you. Real quick, I almost forgot to do this, so let me make sure I do this. How can people connect with you online? How can they listen to your podcast? How can they send you fruit baskets from Chris? No, I'm just kidding. But how can they connect with you? Give me the socials. Give me whatever else you want to share.
Cool. So best way to connect with me will be through Instagram. I'm Matthew_Bivens, and I love getting into direct messages. Right now, I'm taking an actual break from posting on Instagram, which I'm loving, taking a social media break.
Definitely.
But I still interact via DM. So DM me, Instagram, Matthew_Bivens. The podcast, again, is called Having It All, and you can find that on all the major podcast platforms. And I've been doing that show since 2016, I believe. And we're going on to year 4, 250 plus episodes by December of 2020 or 2019. So there's a lot of content for folks to check out. The podcast is cool because it kind of highlights my journey. The show changes over the years as I change, which I think is pretty rad. Mm-hmm. And my website as well, MatthewBivens.com. It's where you can see all my stuff, podcasts, a bunch of free downloads, a bunch of free tools for you to use to help create your own abundant loving life, my courses, information to work with me, all sorts of cool stuff on my website.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. I'll make sure to tag all of that in the show notes and just point people in the direction of you. All right, Matthew, thank you so much. I appreciate everything. And I hope you have an amazing rest of the day and holiday and everything else.
Thank you, sir. You too.
All right, so that's the interview. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you learned some things that are going to help you make changes in your life, because at the end of the day, we are the only people who can change our lives. Now, because it's a new year, one of the big things that helps us to change is to look at the habits we got going on and also the habits that we need to break. And I did a whole 4-part series on building and breaking habits, which is the 2nd through 5th episode of the podcast. So if you go back through the catalog, they're right there at the beginning. Definitely check those out. And I hope you have an amazing start to your new year and that you get all the dreams that you're willing to work for. That's all I got for now. And until next time, peace out.